Jovan, Buha! Buha!
Yo, I'm Jovan Buha, Lakers beat writer for The Athletic, and welcome to another Lakers postgame reaction show. I'm here in LA. As I said, I was not going to be making the trip up to San Francisco for what happened to be a Christmas Day classic. What a game between the Lakers and the Warriors. Lakers won 115 to 113. Austin Reaves gets a game-winning layup with 1 second remaining. And if you guys can't tell by the color above my shoulder, it is Christmas. I tried to make it a little bit more festive. And as you guys know, I cannot go with green, so I went with red, my favorite color. Cannot have the green light tonight. But see you guys in the chat. What's up, everybody? Merry Christmas, happy Hanukkah, happy holidays, whatever you celebrate. Hope you are having a great time with your friends and family. I'm going to be going about 40 minutes tonight. It is going to be a shorter stream. Got my son out here for Christmas. It's my wife's birthday. Shout out to Helena. It's her birthday today. So I am getting pulled in a million directions, but wanted to come on here and get a quick stream in and talk about the madness of what ended up being one of the best Laker wins of the season, one of the most entertaining wins of the season, and just an awesome Christmas Day game that, you know, for all the talk about the NBA and ratings and the game is declining, like some pretty fun, great games today, I think, across the board so far. Christmas Day, I think, has been one of the stronger ones in quite a while. But you guys know the drill. Before we get started, for those watching on YouTube, please be sure to hit that subscribe button. If you're watching right now and you have not yet liked this video, please consider doing so. Get those likes up and then drop a comment after. And for those listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your podcast platform of choice, please be sure to follow, download, and leave a 5-star review. So let's just get into it. I think you guys are fresh off the game. You know what happened. Lakers won 115 to 113 to improve to 17-13 on the season. They are now 6th in the Western Conference, tied for 6th with the LA Clippers. And first takeaway is going to be no AD, no problem. So Anthony Davis goes down midway through the first quarter, and we've seen this countless times with AD where he gets banged up to on some play. And in this instance, it's a non-contact possession where he's retreating for a defensive rebound. LeBron grabs the rebound. AD takes a step. His foot just kind of caves and he sprains his left ankle. That's also the foot, it's worth noting, that he is dealing with left plantar fasciitis on. So that has been a foot that's been hampered since really the second week of the season, but even AD said it went back to the end of last season. So it's been quite a while he's been dealing with this injury. And this has been the second time that he's aggravated that ankle area. So I wonder if he did tell ESPN's Dave McMenamin after the game that he is going to play on Saturday against the Kings, which is the Lakers' next game, and that he's going to be fine. I do think it is slightly concerning that it's the same foot that he's dealing with this nagging plantar fasciitis injury that I can't seem to pronounce correctly. And this is now the second time he's kind of bothered that ankle. So I wonder if longer term, this is something that just going to have to continue to monitor with AD as this season goes along, because really the only way to fully heal his foot is to rest it and to miss time. And for the Lakers' sake, I don't think that they're going to look to do that. But certainly it's been a little bit concerning that AD has now had several kind of things in that left foot ankle area. That said, it did not matter tonight because the Lakers, as I mentioned, got a huge performance from Austin Reaves, game-winning layup, 26 points, his first triple-double of the season, third triple-double of his career. He had 26, 10, and 10. He was awesome tonight, made several big plays, had a couple of clutch free throws. I want to touch on Austin in a later takeaway, But LeBron was great as well, 31 points, 10 assists. I thought he was locked in on both sides of the ball, treated this like a playoff game, had a certain level of intensity. And I think it was a combination of playing the Warriors, it also being Christmas Day and knowing there was going to be more eyeballs. Also, AD going out and just kind of knowing the importance of this game, it felt like brought the best out of LeBron. And we've seen him, of course, have big nights offensively. Him having 31 and 10 offensively is... He's had several games like that this season, but I thought the way that he was attacking them, playing bully ball, mashing them, and just dissecting the defense and finding cutters and shooters, I thought LeBron did that at a very high level. And then defensively was rotating out, switching on to Steph, what was being disruptive in passing lanes, just a really solid performance from LeBron. And I thought he really stepped up with 80 out. And then some unsung heroes. I think Rui Hachimura, 18 points, hit 5 threes, had a big and one late, and he was primarily playing center without 80 in there. Christian Coloco played 9 minutes, but 80 only played 7. Christian Coloco played 9. That's 16 minutes from those two. So that's 32 minutes of small ball center between LeBron and Rui. And I thought Rui, for a guy who's rather limited defensively in terms of his mobility and sometimes the decision making, I thought he did a really good job of hedging and recovering and retreating and cutting off the lob and just forcing guys into tough decisions. And of course, there were some times where they scored on him or got offensive rebounds, but I thought Rui really competed on the defensive end, and it isn't really reflected in his numbers. He only had 4 rebounds, but and a block, and no steals, but like I just thought he was really effective on that end. Max Christie, 16 points, was hounding Steph Curry. Steph did have 38. He did have the big couple threes late. He did hit 8 threes overall, 14 to 24 shooting. But I thought for the most part, Max was playing fairly sound defense on Steph. Like he just hit a bunch of Steph-like shots, and sometimes great offense will beat good defense. I will say some of the Lakers, like, I thought the play that caused JJ to call the timeout that yanked AD from the game, he didn't. It was like a double stagger screen for Steph that he was might have, I guess, been a double flare screen for Steph that he was coming off of, and AD didn't really step up, and you could tell his mobility wasn't really there. So I think the Lakers can certainly take away some of the mistakes defensively from this game in terms of switching and like Steph is so unique that there isn't really another shooter who poses the same level of problems. But I think some of the Lakers' miscommunication with the switching and the timing, I thought on the 3 that Steph hit with 6 seconds left, Draymond set an amazing illegal screen on Austin. He basically grabbed him the second Max tried to make contact, and he hit Max too. He lifted his arms up, and it was like the perfectly timed illegal screen to get Steph open, and it worked. The refs didn't call it. But overall, LA, 9 turnovers after a game against the Pistons in which they had 20, 42 3-point attempts, which was their most in almost a month and a half. Hit 15 threes, so they were right there. Golden State had 18. They went nearly shot for shot. So I just thought there was a lot of positive from this game. A lot of guys stepped up. I thought Cam Reddish came in, gave them some solid minutes against Steph, and just provided a nice little boost. Dalton Connect had 13 points, his most since December 16th. Had 11 like midway through the second. Had a quiet game from that point on, but I thought kept them afloat in the first half, helped them get a little bit of a lead. Even Christian Coloco like had a pretty quiet night, but he at least came in, played 9 minutes, and was sort of an innings eater in there. There were +7 in his 9 minutes. And then Gabe Vincent didn't shoot the ball well, had some wild misses from 3, but was at least competing defensively and overall. So I think this was like an all-around group effort. This is, to me, one of their best wins of the season. But I look at it more from the lens of, I haven't even mentioned D'Angelo Russell yet, who was also out tonight. He got ruled out with that left thumb sprain that he suffered in the Pistons game. So they're without their leading bench scorer. They're without their leading scorer, best player, defensive fulcrum in AD. They're without half their front court already. No Vando, no Christian Wood, no Jackson Hayes. And LA being undersized, playing arguably the best small ball team in the league. Like the Warriors essentially invented small ball, or at least like the modern conception of it, and excel at it. and the Lakers execute and outmaneuver them at their own game. So I just think that there was a lot of positives to take away from this. Nearly lost it at the end with the Steph flurry, but they held on. It was enough to win. And considering no AD, no D'Lo, and then the injuries that they're already dealing with, I think it's really, you can nitpick and find stuff wrong with the rotation, with certain guys' performances. But for the most part, I thought everyone stepped up, did their job. And this was just a really, really solid all-around team win. Takeaway number 2 is Austin Reaves stepped up. And I mentioned it. So Austin, Lakers run one of their like wide receiver kind of sets where everyone's like running the passing lanes, and then Austin comes to the ball, gets the ball on the left wing, and just jab steps and beats Andrew Wiggins, who is athletic, is bigger than him, and I think has clearly some physical advantages over Austin, but Austin beats him to the basket. He throws in a little scoop righty. I thought underrated part of that was Rui clearing out. He cleared out along the baseline. It was actually out of bounds, but he dragged Jonathan Kuminga away as the low man from the basket. I think Kuminga should have just stepped up because Rui was out of bounds. Like there was no way that, there was no way that Rui was going to be able to score. Like if Austin dumped the ball to Rui was going to be out of bounds. It would have been physically it just geometrically difficult for Rui to step back in bounds, catch that, and have enough time left. So I thought Jonathan Kuminga read that the wrong way. Andrew Wiggins just got beat by Austin. Great play by Austin, but I thought didn't start the game particularly efficiently. Even I think overall finished 8 of 20. So I think he started like 5 for 15 and then made some big plays late, but he had a big, I want to say floater late. He had a big 3 late. He had a big couple of free throws and just made play after play. And the Lakers also had a behind the back pass to LeBron for a 3. Like I just thought Austin was great in the pick and roll tonight, really picked on Golden State in the pick and roll. And picked on their weaker defenders and just read the defense really well. So I think there's a lot of notable performances in this game, but if there was a game ball, I would give it, and I was JJ, I would give it to Austin. I just thought he was terrific. And especially after one of his rougher games, like as we talked about after the Lakers-Pistons game, I thought that was one of his rougher performances of the season. He got swallowed at times by the Pistons' size on the perimeter and coughed up the ball a couple times and had 6 turnovers. And I thought tonight he came back and really responded well. So I thought AR had a really, really nice performance. And then I think the third thing, I was going to touch on the small ball as a third takeaway, but I'm going to pivot here. Actually, I rarely do this. I'm going to talk about Lakers are at the 30 game mark, and I'm going to, as you guys know, who've been following my channel and my podcast for a while, every 10 games, I do a 10 game check-in, the state of the Lakers, 10 storylines through the 10 game mark. So I don't want to spoil that right now. But one thing that I find very interesting is before the season, Rob Pelinka at Media Day said that he wanted to wait until the 30 game mark to evaluate this team. And today marks 30 games. The Lakers are 17-13. They are tied for 6th in the West. Technically right now, they would not be in the play-in. They would have a playoff spot. And I think that the big question for Rob Pelinka and the Lakers organization is, has this team shown enough to invest in? And I think the answer is yes. I think tonight, to me, undid a lot of the, I called the last loss unserious, and I was pretty critical about their performance and just the mindset, and then also some of the roster flaws in terms of not being able to compete athletically. But I thought tonight, like they had every excuse to fold. No AD. How are you supposed to protect the like? Golden State has been very vocal about the impact that AD has against them, even with him on one leg. I think he blocked a shot and like, changed another one or two. Like he was still being effective in there, hobbled. And Golden State does not want to see AD. That's a guy who gives them problems. So to lose AD, to not have D'Lo, And to pull off a win like this, and again, Golden State hit them with several runs in the second half, and there was plenty of chances for LA to fold, and they didn't. And even aside from this, I think LeBron has really been playing much better since coming back from his break. AD, of course, is setting Laker highs and best metrics since New Orleans in several categories. I think Austin is having a career season. I think D'Lo's been a bit up and down, but has started to find his role as the sixth man or bench scorer. Max has really stepped in nicely as a starter. Rui continues to be a bit inconsistent, but I think has shown a level of physicality that he hasn't always shown, and is taking some progress and some steps there. As a big fan in JJ. So Cam Reddish has been solid in spot minutes. Gabe Vincent has found a shot. Like, there's a lot here to be encouraged by. And I think the biggest thing with this group obviously has been the inconsistency. I would put part of that as like they've been pretty matchup based, and I think not having half their front court has really hurt them at times. But if this team gets healthy at some point and can make the right trade or two, I do think they have a chance to be very competitive in the Western Conference. And I just think it was worth touching on with this being the 30-game mark, with them having this type of win on the road on Christmas Day, biggest stage of the NBA season during the regular season, doing so without their best player, leading scorer, best defender. I just think, that's notable to me. But with all that said, let's get into the Q&A. I see we have 3 super chats. As a reminder, I'm going to go about 40 minutes. So going to do about 25 minutes or so of Q&A. Super chat here from Gabriel. Austin Reaves saved my life. I hope you were joking, but if that's true, that's awesome, I guess. I'm glad you are safe. I know this is a popular Twitter joke, but yeah, I mean, Austin was awesome tonight. Super chat from King Rifa _Chifa. Is it safe to trade D'Lo now? Wing or big? Heart the show. Thank you, King Rifa _Chifa. Like saying that name. Is it safe to trade D'Lo now? I mean, I do like. I think he's always been the guy most likely to be traded. It's kind of between him and Gabe, just from a contract perspective and like an asset perspective. I do think this game was encouraging from a like they can win without him and putting the ball more in Austin's hands and running more of the offense through him. I do think this is partly matchup specific. Like, again, against Detroit, Austin wasn't as effective. Now, at the same time, D'Lo wasn't very effective against Detroit and only played 15 minutes, though part of that was apparently due to the left thumb sprain. Bench didn't have a lot of juice tonight. Now, it was Cam, Christian Coloco, Gabe Vincent, Dalton Connect. They combined for 24 points. You'd like to see that be at least in the 30s, I would say, on most nights. But they were shorthanded, no D'Lo, no AD. So basically we're running an 8-man rotation, and two of those guys, in Christian and Cam, you're not really asking them to score much, if at all. So I would say this is maybe a blueprint game for like how the offense can function without D'Lo. I don't know if you can expect this type of performance from LeBron and from Austin on a nightly basis. I still think ideally, if you trade D'Lo, you find another guard that can help run the offense off the bench. I don't know if that's Gabe. He did have 3 assists tonight, which is on the higher end for some of his recent performances, but I still view Gabe more as like an off-ball weapon shooter rather than more of like an on-ball, like he's more of a shot creator for himself. So I still think they need that like backup point guard role, but maybe it's not as important as it is in theory. Although I do wonder if some of this is matchup specific. The Lakers have certain advantages against the Warriors for sure. Another one from King Rifa _Chifa. Do you think Curry ruined the NBA with threes, copycat league? I don't think so. I don't put it on Steph. I don't think the NBA is ruined. I think if like you guys are watching this right now because you are in theory basketball fans, Laker fans, NBA fans, right? So I think the numbers, even if the numbers are lower, I think there's a lot of factors. The biggest one to me is just like, for example, like I don't have cable. I don't watch basketball games through cable. I get league pass through the NBA and watch games that way, or I'm in attendance at games. But you know, if I want to watch just a regular game, like I have a special league pass, and I think a lot of people have league pass, or they stream illegally, or they just don't have cable, and that's just the way things are. So that's going to affect the numbers a little bit, and I think that adds up. But I think if you want to blame something for the threes, I would blame analytics more, and just front offices across the league have strengthened their analytics departments and really leaned into analytics, and even analytics sounds like a big word. It's really just like JJ talked about recently, just the basic math of like statistically the two best shots in the league are layups and threes, and anything that's not a layup or a three from a point per possession basis, even if you are an elite mid-range team like the Suns, they're still better off. He used the Suns as an example, and it was kind of talking through some of their offensive percentages and numbers. So the fact of the matter is the NBA has shifted way more toward layups and threes. I think this is a conversation for another show, and maybe if you want, I could do a deeper dive on it. But for me, I would like, my counter would be, look at the Lakers. The Lakers still don't take a lot of threes. Like they take more threes than, you know, maybe teams like 10 years ago, but the Lakers are still a bottom 5 3-point team in terms of volume, who lives in the paint, lives at the free throw line, and they play a different style of trying to get downhill, trying to get to the rim. So like there certainly is an element of copycatting. Now, I don't think any player in the league has the green light that Steph Curry has. I guess maybe Anthony Edwards is attempting 1 million threes a game, so maybe he's like the exception, but some of the stars do. But like outside of them, I don't think it's like every team, like no one on the Lakers has a green light the way that Steph Curry does. Not even LeBron. So I think there aren't many guys actually playing like Steph. Now the 3-point, volume has increased across the league, and I don't think it's as big of an issue as everyone's making it out to be, but maybe I'm biased with like, I just love the NBA, and I think things change, just like technology, just like culture, just like whatever, like things are constantly evolving and changing. And I think it's good ultimately. And I thought tonight what was a pretty good example of, we had a lot of really good games. There were a lot of threes attempted, but that wasn't like, Kaminga dunked on what Max and sort of Rui, I think, was like the second guy. You had plenty of really big, awesome plays tonight, like that had nothing to do with the 3-point line. So I personally don't think it's as big of an issue as everyone does. Super chat from Tori10 BGN. What up, man? Bruce Brown, DFS, and Kessler if Rob is serious. Yeah, I mean, I think that's among the known list of guys out there, right? There could be guys that we don't know are available, but among the guys that seem to be available, those three are near the top of the list. And especially Kessler, if you can make that JHS and a pick, like that's a no-brainer. Super chat from Delo's Strongest Soldier. This game reminded me of the double overtime versus Golden State last year and how enjoyable it was. Yeah, this was just a fun game. Like this was Lakers Warriors have had some classic games over the past few years, right? Like going back to play-in, the playoff series, as you mentioned last year, the double OT game, where that was when D'Lo looked off LeBron and took that pull-up three in transition, which was one of the wildest look-offs I can remember. And he had not been, I think he had like airballed or missed badly his last three, and he was in a little bit of a slump at that point. And it was like, dude just pulled up, let it rip, and hit it. And like, that was a huge shot, a huge moment. So yeah, I mean, Lakers Warriors always feels like, there's something extra, and we know, of course, the history of it. 53rd matchup between LeBron and Steph, and those two just love competing, love playing against each other, and they've had so many classic matchups. So I thought this was arguably the most entertaining game of the season for the Lakers. I would say, I mean, the Atlanta game, I know the ending was not what Laker fans wanted, but I'm looking at the schedule quickly. Yeah, I would say the Atlanta game is up there. The New Orleans game, but that was a bit of a rock fight. Utah game was pretty drunk at the end. Yeah, I would say the Orlando game was also a pretty entertaining game until the missed free throws and yeah. So I would say from a Lakers perspective, this was probably the most entertaining game of the season, especially when factoring in Christmas Day, etc. Super chat from Harry Chinani. Thank you for the super chat. 10-3 when AD scores 30 plus, 7-10 when he scores under 30. Although tonight was an exception, AD needs to dominate for us to have a chance. Yeah, for sure. And me saying no AD, no problem with my first takeaway was more in jest than anything. Like, the Lakers clearly need Anthony Davis. I don't like, this was a spirited performance and an undermanned, like, scrappy performance that this group has really not had many of this season, but reminds me of some of the performances we saw in the Darvin era, honestly, when they would be undermanned and just kind of find a way to win a game. But for sure, AD is their best player. He's their leading scorer. He's their best defender. This all revolves around AD in like a long-term macro, big picture perspective. So for sure, AD is very much needed. Laker 702, appreciate you, bro. Appreciate you, bro. Merry Christmas, happy holidays, whatever you celebrate. Hope you had a great day today. Laker Sean, super chat equals Starbucks tomorrow. Thank you. Merry Christmas and thanks for what you do. Thank you, Laker Sean. I really appreciate that, genuinely. And Merry Christmas to you and yours. Really appreciate you. JK Lobos, have you had Lobos tequila? Just curious. What do you think? Is Lonzo going to Charlotte if he is not traded? Bobby Marks wrote that the Hornets may trade Trey Mann because of cap space. How much do you think they will ask for him? Well, thank you for the super chat. There was a report today from a Chicago reporter, and I think it's always, and I've talked about this a little bit, but like when I'm reporting on the Lakers, right, it typically has a more of a Lakers slant, especially if it's coming from the team. So the reporting today from the Bulls was that they want an expiring contract for Lonzo and second round draft capital. Sounded like multiple seconds. So one actual trade that could work, depending on how Lonzo looks the next couple of weeks, next few weeks, I guess, and in terms of health and all that stuff, is like D'Lo and 2 second round picks would suffice in terms of like that framework that Chicago had come out in terms of what they're looking for Lonzo. Now, rarely when you are asking for a certain price, like there's always going to be a negotiation. So maybe that ends up being like an expiring plus a first. And I'm not saying the Lakers should trade D'Lo for Lonzo. It is an interesting trade depending on, again, the health of Lonzo and his performance. I think because Lonzo, in theory, I would assume he would come off the bench, but regardless of whether he's starting, coming off the bench, like he could kind of be that D'Lo in terms of running the second unit, getting that group out in transition and sort of being the floor general. And then defensively, he could defend either backcourt spot, even some smaller threes. And I just think he's a smart player who would fit really well with this group and get a lot of the other guys going. And that's kind of an element that the Lakers would really miss without D'Lo, because his shooting has not been like, they missed last year's version of D'Lo in terms of the shooting, and it has been better the last like 10 games or so. But this version of D'Lo overall, they're not going to quite miss the shooting as much as like they would have last season. So I think they really will miss like the organization and the playmaking. And that's something that Lonzo has excelled in the past. And I also think he kind of excels in chaos and open court and whatnot. But that's like an interesting trade. I'm not advocating that the Lakers do that. I just think based on the framework that was thrown out there from a Lakers perspective, what could work with that. I think the Lakers would have to throw in someone else. So maybe it ends up being like D'Lo, JHS, and like a second, and they say we'll give you JHS and take out one of the picks and like whatever. But that's kind of the loose. Now, I guess the first part of your question is he going to Charlotte? I don't know. I have not heard that, but if you're referencing something Bobby Marks said, like I trust Bobby Marks on anything cap related. Super chat from JR Madrano. If AR is your third best player, you have a good team. If AR is your fourth best player, you might have a championship team. Food for thought, in my opinion. I'm pretty much with you. Like I will say that for the people who are very critical of Austin, I would love to know what you thought of his performance tonight, genuinely, just because I think nights like tonight he was a Lakers second best player. And the Warriors have been certainly dealing with their own struggles and whatever. But and again, I'm not saying he needs to be the Lakers second best player. I'm just more so making the point of like, I thought they had a really good road win with Austin playing a huge role and being their second best player. I think the ideal slotting of him is probably the fourth guy. I think there is a way to make it work with him in the third slot. You need a lot of athleticism and size and defense around him. So I don't think the current roster necessarily supports him as that third guy, unless you are remaking the roster or bringing in as who said it? I'm gonna quickly, as Todi said, Todi 10 earlier mentioned Bruce Brown, DFS, Walker Kessler. You go get those guys. I think Austin can function more as that true number three. If you don't, then I think if you go and get a Brandon Ingram, that he's the number four, or like I think it just kind of depends on the makeup of your team. But I don't necessarily view it in a vacuum. But I'm gonna go about 10 more minutes, and then I will wrap. Jeremy Madrano says, "Oh, my comment wasn't a shot at Austin. It's more so how the Lakers should operate." Yeah. And I think I've been advocating more for a Brandon Ingram type lately. He's also one of the guys where, like a Jimmy or a Zach LaVine, you're gonna have to throw in almost certainly another contract into that deal compared to an Ingram deal. Ingram you could do with Rui and D'Lo. You get there, and then you figure out the draft capital, but. Sky Falcon, Jovan, did you see AR's agent's statement after the game? I did not. I can pull it up quickly, but I will. I like this question from Max V Max. Do you think the team should embrace an offensive or defensive identity? I mean, ideally both, right? The historical hallmark for a championship team is top 10 in offense and top 10 in defense. So I think I like it. There are exceptions, and you typically have to be greater in your, like, so for example, you could be the third best offense and like the 16th best defense, but the worse you are at one of the two, the better you have to be in the other one to make up that difference. I think looking at this group, I do think overall, in terms of the roster makeup and the hierarchy of the players, they lean more offensive. And I think if you go back to the 10-4 start, which was arguably, I would say, the best basketball they've played this season, they were a top 10 offense and a bottom 5 defense. Now, is that sustainable? There were certain things like AD was healthier, and certain guys were shooting the ball better, though. it's weird. It's like guys have been playing better recently, but they've not been shooting the ball well. Although Lakers have really not shot the ball well most of the season. But part of that was Dalton breaking out. Austin had some big games early in the season. So I guess I think that the current roster, if today it's announced no more trades can be done, trade season is over, this roster is what it is, I would lean more toward the offensive end. I think the goal for this team should be to make some trades that help them lean more into the defensive end. And then this can be like the 10th to 12th best defense and a top 5 to 8 offense. And that is how you win a championship or at least contend for one. Because I do have some concern. Like, I know they've leaned more into the defense, but I don't. It is a lot like, they've reduced Dalton's role outside of tonight, and it's been a lot more like Cam, Max, Gabe. And I think and then if Vando comes back, it's interesting to see kind of how he fits into all that. But I do think longer term with AD, LeBron, Austin, D'Lo, Rui, Dalton, even Gabe to an extent, and Max has been playing better offensively. Like, they have so many guys who could get double figures that you certainly don't want to punt on defense. And that's I think the balance they're trying to strike right now. But I do think this group is more offensively talented than defensively talented. Like, I just don't think they have like many traditional stoppers. I think they have guys who can be like B+ defenders. And maybe Vando's the one guy who can get up to like the A level on the perimeter side. But I think this group should lean more into offense. Okay, I see we got some super chats. Well, Max, I see you sent a super chat, so I'm assuming I answered your question. Thank you for that. BLC, how did the Lakers address their inconsistencies? I would say the injuries don't help, and switching the rotation as much as JJ has tinkered with it doesn't help either. At the same time, I think he's trying to instill a certain seriousness into the group in terms of, if you're not going to rotate, if you're not going to box out, if you're not going to make the extra pass, if you're not going to set screens hard and cut hard and get back in transition, you're going to get benched. So it's a fine line there in terms of like trying to hold guys accountable, but also if you're constantly tinkering and changing things, it is hard for guys to get into a rhythm, and that can lead to some inconsistency. I think this is kind of the DNA of the group, unfortunately. So I would say the easiest way, in my opinion, is like trade some of the less serious guys and try to build a rotation that's a little bit more serious, a little bit more consistent and stable. And I think if you could do a trade or two to address some of those things, and then you have the remaining guys who are a little bit more stable and consistent, that's probably the way to do that, in my opinion. Certainly there's elements of this that have to be coached and have to be addressed within the locker room and like with players holding themselves accountable. But I mean, going back to last season, I would say like this was largely the same group, and they had plenty of inconsistencies and these wild fluctuations of, they have the rough start, then they go on the NBA Cup run, then they have the 3-10 stretch in December, then they save Darvin's job early in January, then they go on another skid, and then they close the season really strong, right? So this team has been so up and down for a year and a half now that I kind of think that's who they are. But I think really the two best ways, in my opinion, are continuing to drill this stuff in practice and film, and with consequences if you aren't going to play hard and do certain things that the coaching staff wants. And then I think longer term, it's got to probably be a trade or two to take out some of the unseriousness and to put in, I think, better players and players who kind of fit more of what they need. Super chat from Christian Ochoa. Fernandez, good to see your Max stocks paying off. Do you think he will start if Vando comes back? Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas to you, Christian. Max Christie Island. Right now we're drinking eggnog. Everyone is listening to Christmas music, and it's a party on Max Christie Island. I recommend you invest now if you want to have your stocks pay off down the road. But in all seriousness, like, yeah, I mean, this is why I said when people were freaking out about Max at the beginning of the season, don't give up on Max. He's 21. This is his first real time being in the rotation, being counted on, and he's going to go through some type of learning curve, growing pains. I think he's come out a much better player on the other side of that, and I do think he's likely going to start if Vando comes back, because we don't know when Vando is going to come back. There's been no update on Vando, and I think Rui is going to continue to start. It seems to be like he's earned a certain level of trust and goodwill with JJ. I think Vando, you could talk me into it from a defensive perspective, of course, but the drop off from Max as a shooter, like Crane was just tweeting about it. Like, Max has basically been a 40% catch and shoot guy for now almost 2.5 seasons. And like, he's just a solid, reliable catch and shoot option. And he has had some rough stretches this season, but overall in the aggregate, I think he's up to like 38, 39% this season. So I think the difference between Max and Vando offensively is pretty significant. And I think Max continues to start at the 2. Now, do they make a trade? Do they trade Rui? Do they bring someone else in? And that maybe shifts. Like, for example, let's say they trade for Zach LaVine. Then all of a sudden, I think it probably makes more sense. You go Vando, LaVine, Austin Reaves as your perimeter trio. That would make more sense. But in terms of, as things stand, I would say I think Max is going to continue to start. Let's see, we got 4 more super chats. Then I am going to wrap. Harry Chinani, when is C Wood back? What's his role going to be? Good question on both fronts. I mean, there's been no update. It sounded like he's trending toward returning relatively soon, but again, that's kind of happened twice already with this whole situation, and he hasn't. So I don't know, maybe mid-January, like on the optimistic side. It's the month's about to be over. And there's been no significant update there. What's his role going to be? I think it's going to be, I think he and Jackson, once both back, are going to be battling for that backup 5 spot. And it's either going to come down to one of them significantly outplaying the other one and just taking the spot, or what I would expect would be more of a matchup based scenario in which there's going to be certain matchups where they feel like Christian with the floor spacing and the rim protection is the better option, and some where Jackson and his mobility, the rim running, the athleticism is the better backup option. So I think it really just comes down to matchups, in my opinion. But between the two, obviously, if Christian shot 31% on threes last year. If he comes in and shoots 38, 40%, he's probably going to have a big role and potentially just take that from Jackson. But I think it's really going to come down to his performance, and then also, when do these guys get healthy, and when do they eventually come back? Super chat from Eeg. Observation. So funny. The antithesis of Detroit mega athletic and big guard play versus Warriors non-athlete guard play. Golden State, not a barometer to measure LAL, in my opinion. Agree. Side note, Caruso, 4 years, 80 million. Yikes for Lakers front office. Yes. So I talked about that. I forgot if it was the last stream or whatever was the stream I did of the day that the Caruso deal was agreed upon. I think it's a really good value for Caruso. I honestly think that's a discount. I think he's a guy who open market could get 25 to 30 million per year based on being one of the elite perimeter defenders in the league. He's also really grown as a shooter and as a playmaker, passer. So I think great value on OKC's part. To your point, like I would push back a little bit on this, in that from a guard perspective, I would say like Dennis, I thought was pressuring Austin 94 feet and bothering him a little bit. I think Kuminga, Wiggins, those guys are both big athletes that are, Wiggins is 6'7", 6'8", Kuminga is 6'9". Those guys, Kuminga's not a plus defender, and Wiggins, I thought, had some good defensive moments, had some pretty rough defensive moments, especially last play. So I agree with the general point that they're not as athletic and not as good defensively, from like we're going to pick you up 94 feet, pick your pocket, be rough, foul you a lot, the way that Detroit is. But I would say between Wiggins, Schroeder's speed and ability to be a pest defensively, Kuminga, and even Draymond, like he's not like conventionally athletic, but for a 6'7" guy to defend the way that Draymond does and to switch on to people and just like, I think they're more athletic maybe in the front court than you're giving them credit. But to your point, there's certainly a night and day difference in terms of like how Detroit defends, how Golden State defends, and the strengths of those teams. Like Detroit is huge. They would have like 4 guys 6'7" and above on the floor in certain lineups. Golden State is a small ball team. They play much smaller. They're more of a finesse team. So Golden State has typically been a better matchup for the Lakers than a team like Detroit. So I do agree with your premise. I do think Golden State has some athleticism. I don't want to just completely overlook that. Super chat from Moises Cohen. After TO, how does Rui not stay on top with Curry on his game tying 3? So you're saying timeout there. Why can't Rui play defense? That I would say was a decision-making error on Rui's part. And that's where I did say, I thought he made a lot of correct decisions defensively. This would be one of them. And in general, the Lakers botched some of the communication and switching with Steph. It's a good question. I think Rui spoke tonight. I would love to see what he said if he was asked about this, but he certainly should have, because I believe he was guarding the inbounder, if I'm not mistaken. And this was the play where I referenced where Draymond sets an amazing illegal screen that takes out both Austin and Max, and Rui kind of cheats over, but it's like a soft hedge and he doesn't fully commit to Steph. And it's like, and you could see there was one angle where Greg St. Jean, who's one of the Lakers assistants, he's like screaming like the ball's going there, and he's pointing to the spot that Steph's about to be at, and Rui just doesn't rotate over. So that was a huge mistake. And that's one of the limitations of Rui is sometimes I think from like a split second decision making perspective, like you'll see it when he's in the short roll and he needs to make a read. Sometimes he doesn't make the obvious read or the correct read. And sometimes he'll have a turnover there, or he took a couple of tough mid-range jumpers tonight. So like Rui from a decision-making perspective, I think has gotten better, but it's still not a strength of his. And this was an example of that for sure. And final one from Angelco Azorad Rezo. Yo, Merry Christmas. Poor shot selection. My biggest pet peeve with the Lakers. Tonight's standout is a 3-on-2 and AR decides to pull up and take a 3. We need a real 3-and-D player. Please, Pelinka. 100% agree with that last point. Lakers need a 3-and-D wing, ideally in the 6'6" to 6'8" range. I do tend to say a different, I've noticed I say a different height every time. I would say at a minimum 6'6", ideally bigger, but upwards of like 6'8", 6'9". And yeah, like I would say that that's a shot that if you go back to the preseason, JJ was actually encouraging the group to take, or certain guys within the group. AR has been a good pull-up 3-point shooter, and I think that's a shot he can make. To your point, I don't love that type of shot, especially 3-on-2, try and get to the rim, especially against this type of group. So I would have to rewatch the clip that you're referencing to give you a answer as to if I thought that was the right play on that specific possession. But in theory, to your point, like 3-on-2, you should be trying to get to the rim. But I also think JJ encourages that. That is something that if you want to get on analytics and the 3-point movement and all that stuff, like that's kind of an example of that is certainly philosophically different than what teams and players did in the past. But that will do it. Okay, I see we got one more. Eeg with the $50 super chat. Wow. Thank you so much. Coveted clutch. Thank you very much, Eeg. Merry Christmas, G. Great call with regard to Max. Could be an interesting territory. A guy in trade that requires a young, promising player could be Max. Would prefer a more veteran guy for the offs, but there's for sure potential in the next 2 to 3 years. Good call. Thank you for that. And thank you for the very kind super chat. I think it's a perfect way to end this show. In Jovan fashion, I went about 10 minutes over. So what do you know? Merry Christmas to you all. Happy holidays. Happy Hanukkah. Happy whatever you celebrate. Again, hope you all got some great time with your family and friends. That will do it for tonight's show. I will be back on Friday morning with a new episode of Buha's Block, touching on the storylines at the 30 game mark and everything relevant going on over the last 10 game span, and even looking ahead with some of the trade stuff coming up. So be on the lookout for that. That will be going up Friday morning, Pacific time. But thank you all so much for watching and listening on Christmas, for taking time away from your loved ones to listen, to comment, to super chat. I know I didn't get to everyone's questions. This is a bit of a shorter stream, but I hope you'll forgive me as I spend time with my family and my loved ones. Shout out to my wife, Helena, for her birthday. Happy birthday. I love you. And shout out to everyone that's been rocking with me. We're almost at the end of the year. It's been about 9 months or so with this channel, with this show. I appreciate you all. And I'm ready for 2025 and to do things even bigger and better. But that will do it. Thank you all so much. For those watching on YouTube, please be sure to hit that subscribe button, turn on channel notifications, and like and comment on this video. For those listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your podcast platform of choice, please be sure to follow, download, and leave a 5-star review. I'll be back Friday. I will talk to you then. Merry Christmas.